Welcome to day 16 of the 21-day relational challenge. So, did you figure out what your fight style was?
Your fight style.
Were you able to place a conflict on the table and look at it side by side rather than nose to nose? Today is about the nuts and bolts of resolving conflict, which always requires having difficult conversations.
Always requires that. Okay, so if you suddenly see me disappear off the screen, it's because I need to answer my phone. One of my mom's doctors is calling me for a phone consultation and is scheduled for the very tail end of this video. But you're just going to carry on, right? If that happens.
I'll fight with myself.
You'll fight with yourself. So there's some great resources out there that we've used in the past to help people deal with conflict. And one of the best books on the subject is called Crucial Conversations. Yep. And it was required reading for our children as they approached adulthood and marriage. And it really prepared them well for life. So
we're going to give you some steps to consider as you work through conflict. And there's a number of steps as we go. I'm calling it the conflict tree. And so I'm going to post a picture, a hand-drawn conflict tree with all the steps just for you.
Beautiful.
And
just for you.
Don't judge the colors.
He's colorblind, so he'll do his best.
So if you're in a deadlock, you've been having the same conversation over and over, circling the same problem. What do you do, Leanne?
Well, the first thing you want to do is create safety and plan to have the conversation. Sometimes we try to resolve conflict when we're tired or hangry. To that, we say, listen, just stop. Scripture says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. However,
in our relationship, just let Leanne go to bed.
Exactly.
Or, in the case of last night, just feed the girl.
Exactly. Well, we didn't have dinner till like 6:30, and I started to get a little crazy. But anyway.
It'll be a far more productive conversation if Leanne is not hangry.
Exactly. So plan a time to meet with the other person when you're both rested and likely to respond reasonably and in love to the other person's concerns. When you're tired or stressed or distracted by other things going on, things rarely go well, from our experience.
Yeah. So when you meet, affirm the relationship and clearly define the problem. For example, you could say, our relationship is important to me, and that's why I'm coming to you today. But when you don't return my calls, I feel rejected and unimportant. Avoid blaming the other person and saying, you make me feel. Instead, say, when you do A, I feel B. And when you connect to have a conflict conversation or a crucial conversation, create some ground rules. Mm-hmm. We aren't going to raise our voices. No one's going to walk out when the tension builds. We're committed to staying engaged. And oftentimes, if it's heavy duty, meet in a neutral place. Go for a social distance walk.
Yeah. So, Darcy, can we talk about something that's really bothering me right now? I mean, is this a good time? Does this work for you? You know I love you.
Yes, I do.
And I'm committed to this relationship. I'm not going anywhere, but when you eat, drink, or breathe, I feel very irritated by the noises that kind of emit from your person at this moment. Okay?
Wow. So the next step is to listen to understand. Remember that listening exercise we had you do? This is your time to shine and to go from practice to real. So listen quietly with no interruption, trying to see the world from the other person's perspective. Listen for feeling and not just words, and this helps us connect deeply with the other person.
And you want to stay focused on the issue. Like, separate people from the issue. And Darcy and I often use the picture of kitchen tongs. You know that we should have had some here. But anyway, kitchen tongs, when we're having a difficult conversation where we'll actually imagine ourselves holding the issue away from us. We're talking about the issue. We're not talking about the character of the other person. This is about Darcy's breathing, his drinking, his eating at this moment, and not about Darcy's character.
So thank you, John Kaplan. That was a lifesaver for us. Ask questions. It's time to be curious. Mm-hmm. Trying to understand why your friend or spouse thinks or does what she or he thinks or does. We often have our minds made up about things before the conversation happens have replayed it in our minds multiple times, and the conclusion we have reached usually entails many worst case scenarios.
Or we already conclude that we're right and we see this properly.
So what would happen if we were truly open? Remember, there is my perspective, there is your perspective, and when you step back, there's always a third perspective, if not more.
Yeah, that's good. And then you want to summarize what you heard the other person say and ask them if I understood this correctly. So we started this conversation last night.
Oh, yes.
And so, Darcy, last night, what I heard you say is that you need to breathe.
Or I will die.
Or you will die. Okay, I think I'm beginning to understand this. So
validate their perspective. Acknowledge what your friend or spouse said is reasonable, even if you interpret things differently.
And then you want to express your point of view.
And this is the tricky part.
This is very tricky. This is where we need to exercise all of the self-control that we can find. And, we need to grow up and be emotionally mature.
I love how you would always say to our daughter, it's time to wear your big girl panties.
Big girl panties. It's time.
Or time to man up, as we would say to our boys.
Not attacking, not being out for the win, but share your perspective. Even share your feelings and your suggestions. You want to concentrate on using I words and stuff. But here's the thing. You don't want to crush the other person. So watch your words because they're very powerful. Go easy, because once you say something, it's really hard to take it back.
Negotiate. Remember that the goal is collaboration and not to win, or not to not a winner or a loser, but
not to accommodate, not to
engage creatively and try to find a solution that addresses everyone's concerns. Explore the options together. Be open to the idea that a third possibility or a third position may exist, and that you can get to this position jointly. So I guess, like, I could eat apart from you. I could go into another room and eat.
You could do that, but honestly, I like being with you. It's just your breathing that's bugging me.
So we could play music while we eat together.
Right. Or you could sit on one side of the table and I could sit on the other.
I don't think that's...
There's like 6 feet between us.
I don't think that's far enough.
That's not far enough.
No, that's far enough.
But the whole idea is there's different ways that we can look at this and kind of find a way to solve it. So once you come up with a plan, whatever that is, you want to commit to that plan,
So I commit to playing a soft jazz playlist on Spotify tonight at supper.
And we're going to see if this makes a difference, right?
Yeah, and so if this is with your kids, like, actually book a meeting to talk it through. And if you have a picture of the conflict tree, say, this is what we're going to try and attempt to walk through. Like, you're trying to take out a bunch of the passion or emotion of it and walk through it carefully.
Exactly.
And what we haven't talked about is this. Is this conflict a symptom or is it the issue? My breathing...
You're going to make an assumption here.
I'm going to make an assumption because we talked about this before as we prepped.
We literally talked about this last night because I was... Yeah, anyway.
So I think my breathing is a symptom. The stress of COVID and being isolated is the issue.
And we had talked about this on a walk last night because I just felt like I was sort of coming out of my skin. I just, my own breathing was annoying me. And so I agree. It has nothing to do with your breathing, your eating, because we've been doing this together for 30 years. So it's not about this. I do think that I'm stressed out, and I think that I'm more irritable. And so I need to take responsibility for that piece of it. And I actually think I need some time alone to allow my spirit and emotion and inner life to kind of catch up with myself. So
is this going to be an alone at home day?
I'm not sure how we're going to do an alone at home day when we are working together constantly. But I'm wondering if when we're done dinner, if we kind of go our separate ways in the house and have an alone evening. That probably would be really helpful.
So working this through, whatever the issues are, and the bigger the issue, it might take a few times to walk through this and to look at what's underneath, because on all these little spats that are happening within homes across the world right now, underneath is some big issues, some big pieces. So the final step is forgiveness, which we're going to talk about tomorrow in part 3.
At length.
Karen from Facebook is going to play a part in our conversation.
She's going to weigh in on it. Exactly.
She's going to weigh in. So your challenge today is this: address
one of your conflicts today.
Yeah.
And choose an easy one that you can practice on. Like, don't like, oh, I've been waiting 40 years to talk about this. Choose something really easy to try.
And we're going to finish our conversation about how to resolve my chewing and breathing and eating issues,
because apparently not breathing is not an option.
And some strong words were exchanged last night. I do have to breathe, and I'm glad we now know that it's a symptom and not the issue. So we might actually need to talk about how we're going to resolve some of the stress that's underneath that.
Exactly. So watch for the diagram that Darcy has created. It'll be in the comments section. And remember, together you've got this.